Good morning, viewers, and thank you so much for tuning in to the String Theory podcast. Today, I am here with
Claire.
And today we are going to be talking about being a first-gen student and attending college and more academic stuff. So, Claire, do you mind telling me what school you're going to and what your major is?
I go to UCSD, and I major in marine biology.
All right, and then why UCSD?
I just really wanted to go to a UC, and it was the closest UC that I got into, so yeah.
What all schools did you apply to?
I applied to UCSD, UCLA, UC Irvine, UC Berkeley, Cal State San Marcos, Cal State LA, and University of New Mexico. Quite diverse array.
I'm very happy. I love you, but I'm happy you didn't get into New Mexico.
I did actually.
No! I'm happy you didn't go.
Thank you.
Okay. As from a friend standpoint, I'm happy you didn't go. So, we're both first-gen students, and going to UCSD is a pretty big feat, I'd say, especially in California. I feel like UCSD, UCLA, USC are all pretty big schools that are 4 years, UCs. Do you feel pressure from your family as a first-gen student in comparison to students who aren't?
Actually, I feel less pressure because my parents don't really know what I'm doing, so they don't ever ask. And lots of other people, I hear them, talking about how they have conversations with their parents, asking, what they're doing, or, making sure that their kids have, good grades so that they can keep their credit card or something. So, yeah, I feel quite relaxed.
So I know you had a varying career paths before you settled on marine biology. Do you want to talk about the different majors you explored before you settled on marine biology?
Oh, yes. So I actually got into UCSD as a critical gender studies student. I think just because when I first got into UCSD, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor. And I really didn't want to apply to UCSD as a bio major because I thought, if I apply as a bio major, I'm not going to get in. So I chose critical gender studies because it also just sounded cool. I didn't really know much about it. But when I actually started school, I changed it. I changed it to, I think, visual arts. And I liked that, but I wasn't crazy about it. So I did art history, and I changed it back to visual arts. And then I changed it to linguistics, and I changed it to art history. And then I probably changed it 2 more times, but I don't actually remember. But by my winter of my second year, I was marine biology, and I stuck with it. Yeah.
And do you have a reason why you stuck with it over the others?
I think it was pure determination. I honestly wish that I had done it sooner. I think the only reason I didn't was because I felt I was too stupid to do a bio major. I was like, I don't want to do math. Mm-hmm. Why would I do math? But I honestly don't know. I don't know what kept me stuck with it. Mostly probably just the fear of not graduating on time, which I mean, I'm kind of not anyways, but that's not what's important. I just kind of wanted to settle down finally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then a couple days ago, but this episode will be coming out, I think, 2 weeks after. So recently I talked with Luke, who you know, and Hi, Luke. We had a conversation about if you're majoring in performing art or studio art, that kind of ruins the experience of enjoying that outside of school. Did you feel like that when you were an art major?
I honestly don't know how to answer that because I did and I didn't. I think the art classes that I took at UCSD were 2 of the best classes that I ever took in my whole 4 years of being in college, which sometimes I think is funny. I'm why am I marine bio if the visual arts classes are so much more fun? However, I hate being told what to paint, and honestly, after each of the art classes that I had, I just didn't really want to draw for a long time. You get that feeling where someone keeps telling you oh, hey, you have to do this, 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 and this. And so then when the class ends, it's I don't want to make anything. I just want to take a break. Mm-hmm. So I can imagine if that's your major for a continuous period of time, how it can be really draining and just take the joy out of it.
Do you feel like that with your classes for marine biology? Like, you take these classes and you're zeroed in on it, you're learning so much new stuff, and then you don't really want to learn anything about it outside of school?
Yes and no, but honestly leaning more towards no, because I feel like with my marine bio classes, at least, I find it really fun to actually like apply them outside of school. Like, I like going to the beach, I like going to the tide pools, and now whenever like I'm at the beach, I'm always thinking like, I am surrounded by thousands of tiny little things in the water. It's like you're never alone in the ocean, and I think it's really fun to think about. However, when it comes to like the classes that I do have to take for my major but aren't marine bio, it makes me mad. Like, I'm taking an ecology course this quarter, and I think ecology is fun, and I feel like it comes like, at least I like to think it comes easy to me. But having to do it in a class with a professor I don't like, it's like I don't want anything to do with ecology or anything related to it outside of that class.
And then with UCSD, do you feel like there's a vivid or active social life on campus? Would you say it's cliquey?
It really comes down to the person, because UCSD, the nickname is UC Socially Dead. And I understand it. It's like, if it really all comes down to the person, because if you don't take initiative yourself to make friends, then you're not going to make friends. Because I keep seeing Reddit posts about people saying like, or like even YouTubers. Before I went to UCSD, I watched a YouTuber who talked about how she left UCSD because she didn't make friends. She said that she went to a class and she tried talking, like becoming friends with the people sitting next to her. And she was like really disheartened by how none of them wanted to talk to her. And honestly, like, that you just can't make friends like that at school, because 90% of the time, the people in the lectures sitting next to me don't want to talk to me. And TBH, I don't want to talk to them either. So you have to put in a lot of effort to make friends outside of class. So if you're not the kind of person to like go out of your way to make friends, then the social life will be terrible. But if you're willing to like put yourself into like new social spaces or reach out to people, then you're going to do great.
Why do you think that is, of people aren't, I guess, super socially active at UCSD?
I think because we're all antisocial nerds. At least most of us are. I mean, I don't know. I really actually don't know. I wanted to say it's because we're all nerds, but honestly, I've seen a lot of dumb people, so I don't know. But I think a lot of it just has to do with, especially in like STEM majors, people can be very... No, honestly, in all majors. I felt this in almost every single class I've been in, except for like a couple. The vibes can just sometimes be really off. And people see like helping you or getting super close to you as hurting themselves. Like, they see you as competition, really, for like, who knows what, like internships, jobs, I don't know.
And it's been, I guess, a common thought that UCSD is a pretty prestigious school. Do you feel societal pressure to fit in at all?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I don't know, because I feel like being first gen, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into when you go to school. It's kind of hard to explain, but there's like this pressure to be like all the other students, to like find internships or do research or just like certain things that I feel like are expected of you as a college student there. It's a little strange.
What type of problems that you faced as being a first-gen student that you didn't expect going into it, that you came across and I guess kind of realized the longer you were there?
That's actually a really good question. I think one that I'm like facing now is like kind of sort of networking. I don't want to say that I'm horrible at networking with people, but one thing that I do find a challenge is like connecting with professors. Just because like they scare me. Number one, like no one wants to talk to their professors, but I feel like when you're a first gen student, you sometimes just don't click with these people. Like, they don't get where you're coming from. And I'm like scared that if I reach out to a professor one day, they're going to be like, oh, well, why haven't you done XYZ? And I'll be like, oh, well, because I didn't know that was a thing. Sorry. So there's like this added level of fear that they're just going to think you're an idiot or that you're a mess or you're just like unprepared that kind of holds you back from talking to them in the first place.
What do you think professors can do to be more welcoming to first-gen students or students in general?
Oh, that's also a good question. Let me think. I don't really know what they can do except it sounds really dumb, but if they honestly were just like a little nicer. There's a lot of passive aggressive professors and I really don't want to talk with them. Like, if there's any professors who I'm scared of talking to, it's the ones who aren't understanding. But actually, you know what? I do have an answer. I have had a marine bio professor, and he's very popular within the marine bio major. I can't really tell you why, but he's everyone's favorite. He teaches a ton of classes. I've had him like 4 times. But something that he said in class one day that stuck with me was like, he was talking about getting research opportunities. And he was just talking about like the different circumstances that everyone has that could like enable them or like stop them from having time to do research. And I was like, oh, this man is kind of like socially aware of the fact that like we don't all have the opportunities to do these kind of things. And so even though he like is like probably from a typical not first gen background, I would be okay with talking to him.
Just because he was understanding, he took the time to be compassionate.
Yeah, he's compassionate. He's more open-minded.
I feel like, I mean, for me, I started with going to community college, and I feel like it's pretty easy to connect with my college professors if I wanted to, or if I took the time out of my day to. I think that the stigma around going to a community college first is often looked down upon through UC students. Do you feel within your peers or within your community that you've witnessed that stigma firsthand?
Kind of. I wouldn't say that I've heard anyone say explicitly like community college XYZ, but I have had conversations with people where they've made it evident that people where they come from don't do community college. Like, I was having a conversation the other month with a girl who was talking about how she went to a college prep school, and she was like, oh yeah, well, I mean, the expectation where I went was that you were going to a 4-year university because it was college prep. And I was like, okay. Or like just having conversations with my friends where they're talking about like, oh yeah, all of my friends like from my friend group in high school go to a really prestigious school or blah blah blah. And I'm just kind of like, did no one around here like consider community college? And I have met like people who did go to community college. So like it's not something that doesn't happen, but it's not something that we talk about a lot. It's kind of like, I wouldn't say that people look down upon it. I would say it's more of like a forgotten pathway to a 4-year university.
Would you say it's just as valid as starting at a community college versus starting at a 4-year? Like, I know, like, as we said, you know, people talk down on it, but would you say that that's still a valid career pathway for people to take?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Honestly, if I could go back in time, like, it's kind of hard because I did, like, first year of college was online, so it's hard to say. Second year of college, I did meet, like, a lot of people, blah, blah, blah. But I think that going to a community college for the first 2 years of like college at least is such a smart decision, mostly because you get your lower division classes out of the way for like such a cheaper like rate than having to like try and get them done at a UC with professors who have like too many students who are like not actually even good at teaching or who don't really care about you and just their research. So in reality, all the people who started at community college are so much like smarter than the people who just kind of like jump head in.
Do you think people will jump head in because of excitement or because they want to, I guess, not transfer or go to less schools? Like, what would you attribute that factor to?
I think it's 2 things. One, I think it is definitely the excitement, because a lot of it was excitement for me. I was like, I could go to a community college, but it was like I had the option to go to a 4-year, and I was just so excited for like the college experience. I was like, yippee! So I was just like, I'm jumping in head first. And the second reason is, I think like we've talked about like looking down upon community college. Like people are like, no way, like blah, blah, blah. And I remember even in high school, like it's Oceanside. Like, people go to community college. But there was kids in high school who talked down, like, on the people in community college. I remember I literally took a screenshot of, there was this time where there was a conflict between, like, a high school student at my high school in my grade, because he said something racist. And it was racist towards, like, a Mexican student, or just, like, about, like, Mexican people in general. And so the Mecha at Miracosta made a post saying, like, hey, we really want accountability for this high school student, blah, blah, blah. And someone who I know, who I went to high school with, commented on, because it was an Instagram post from Mecha. They said, this is why you guys are in community college. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I literally probably still have the screenshot of, like, this person saying that. I was like, that is literally so messed up. And I hated his guts already, but I hated them even more after that. And it was very clear, like, and a bunch of his friends liked it too. And I was like, okay, this tells me, like, a lot about you guys. So the stigma against it definitely was very real, even in a community where a lot of, like, people honestly didn't go to college. Yeah.
That's insane. That's
It was
not
gross.
nice, very close-minded.
Yes.
So do you feel any animosity or envy towards people who have lots of money that they go to a more prestigious school like UCSD? Like the people who go on vacation often and don't pay for their own school?
Yes. I feel it very strong, and it's something that I struggle with to this day. I feel like I've gotten better. Like, I don't want to say I've accepted, because saying I've accepted it means that I'm, like, in such a bad situation, because I'm really not. I'm very lucky. But it's also just very hard when you're just, like, I don't know, there's just days where you're having a hard day, and you're like, oh my God, I have to I have to juggle, like, working, and I have to, like, commute, and I have to, like, worry about paying my tuition and XYZ. And then you have these people around you who the only problem that they ever have to focus about is, like, their education. Like, that's never really been something that has been an option for me. I've always had to worry about, like, all these other things and my education. So it's kind of hard to not be, like, very envious. But I will say that, like, being first gen teaches you things that other people don't ever learn. So in a way, like, I'm kind of on a different level from them. I will say.
Just built different?
I'm literally just built different. Like, I honestly think to myself, like, a typical college student who doesn't have to worry about paying bills, whose parents pay for everything, like, gets to live, like, right next to campus or something, an apartment their parent bought them, would not last a single week doing what I have to do. Like, sorry, it's just the truth. So I tell myself that, and I feel very powerful.
That's really good. I was going to say empowering, but you already said it. Do you think those people who grow up, I guess, kind of being, it's not gifted, what's the word? Privileged.
Yeah.
Do you think that they would have to learn those lessons much later on in life anyway, of having to work for things on their own? Or do you think they'll always have that sort of, like, nepotism kind of built into them?
I think it changes from person to person, because I have met people, like, when you get closer to the end of college, it comes up a lot, like, especially when people's parents pay for things. If they're looking, like, for a job or, like, to move somewhere new, like, you ask them, or at least I ask them, or we talk about, like, your parents, like, continuing to support you after college. And there's people whose parents are like, you have, like, so many months to find a job and you're on your own. And there's also people whose parents are going to continue paying for things for them. So I feel like it's a mix of people, like, yeah, their parents are just gonna really be there for them until they decide not to. And there's also people whose parents are just like, yeah, you're done.
Do you think your parents would continue supporting you after college?
As long as I have a job, I think yes. Yeah, as long as I'm not, like, freeloading here, I think I'm always going to have a place to stay. And I don't think they want me to leave either, so.
You got it made in the shade.
Yeah.
And then, When you first came into UCSD, I know your first year was online, but your first year on campus, did you feel welcomed at all?
Not really. I don't know. It's hard to describe it as like a being welcomed or not, but I don't know. It's like I felt like I didn't not fit in. Like I don't know. I can't really say there's anything like you meet me and it's just like, oh, you don't belong here. It's more like this internalized feeling as you like start talking to other people, because I didn't really feel like an imposter at all during my first year, because honestly I wasn't really talking to anyone. I was talking to like people with like mentorship programs that I was in, and the mentorship program I was in was for first gen students by first gen students, so everyone around me kind of had like a similar like story for the most part. Like I wasn't any different from them. But my second year I slowly started to realize, I was like, wait a minute, something's a little different about me. Like, I remember the very first week of school, I was there. And I was telling this chick, she was like, because everyone always asks, oh, where do you live? And I was like, I live in Oceanside. And she was like, why did you not get an apartment? I was like, girl, you don't ask people why they don't have an apartment. And I was like, that was really weird. And I literally didn't even know what to say. I was just like, I don't know. Like, sorry.
That's such a weird question, too.
So, yeah, but, like, people don't even think about that. Like, people, I think a lot of my friends or, like, people getting to know me think that I, like, do what I do by choice. Because I remember, like, I had a friend, no harsh feelings towards her. I love her. I don't know if she'll listen to this, but she does. I love you. She asked me, she was like, what made you choose to not, like, live near campus? And I was like, I did not choose this. Like, no one would choose this. And so I just, like, kind of explained that to her, and I was, like, starting to realize, that people don't even, like, think about it, honestly. Like, they don't factor certain things in, like, financial reasons for why you might live near campus or, like, pay, like, what? Like, almost $2,000, $1,000 a month just to live near school. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't go through your mind.
Mm-hmm. Do you think those people who would ask, those kind of questions, do you feel like because of their social status or financial status that they would have less social skills or personable skills when trying to relate with someone who's kind of not on the same level as them, like a first-gen student, for example?
I don't know. I think maybe, I think the only thing... I don't know, that's a good question. Because there's, like, a mix of both. Like, I've had friends who've been, like, very nice to me, and they're like, oh, yeah, you're very brave and strong for what you're doing. And I'm like, thank you. I literally am. And then I've also had people say, like, kind of weird things to me, and I know they don't mean it in a mean way, but when you say it to me, it's just kind of like, why would you say that? Mm-hmm. Like, I've had a couple people say to me, like, oh, if I was you, I would have, like, given up. And I was like, what do you mean you would have given up? Like, that is not an option. And so it's just kind of like a little strange, a little like off-putting when people make weird comments like that, even if they don't mean it in a bad way.
Do you find yourself, would you associate with people who don't really share the same experience as you? Would you say it's harder to relate to them on levels as being a first-gen student?
I feel like it depends on how well we get along as people, because I have lots of friends who like, I feel like I have a good mix. I have lots of friends who are first gen like you, and we get along great. But I also have a lot of really good friends who aren't first gen and who like on the opposite end of me, and I feel like we get along great. Sometimes it's a little, I don't want to say it's strange or uncomfortable, but it's just like sometimes I'm reminded like we're not the same. Like they'll be talking about certain life experiences that they have, like being able to like travel, or like what their parents did in college, or like their parents like giving the money, or like their, I don't know, just like things like that, like these resources that they have through parents who are like upper class, upper middle class, and who have experience going to college and working like white collar jobs, I guess that's what you call it. And it's just kind of like, okay, like I'm listening, I'm like, okay, that was a little weird. That's a little strange. But it's not anything like detrimental, except sometimes I feel like a little funny. Yeah. it's mostly just like honestly my own insecurity. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then with joining clubs I remember that you said that there's, I don't know if you mentioned it was a club, but it was a group of 4 gen students by first gen students. Do you think joining those clubs help you stay afloat in a big college like that? And if you didn't join those kind of clubs, where do you think you'd be right now?
Okay. Yes. I honestly don't remember how I got into this group, but it's something I've been in all 4 years of college, and I actually work for them now. I'm not gonna dox myself, but I do work for them. I think it was honestly like the best thing that could have happened to me. Number one, because during the pandemic, like I was in 2 programs. One of them was that one. I had a peer mentor, like one of the like only friends I made. I talked to him like so much. I always had meetings with him, and he was so funny. And we wouldn't even talk about school. We just like talked about life. Like I would tell them like I have 16 plushies in my room, or like I like to have lots of plants. And he told me about how he has tons of bugs in his plants, and I was like, oh well, you should change the dirt. Like silly things. Yeah, but it's just I feel like especially now, because I used it my first year, second year, and third year. Like I just kind of like didn't interact with it as much. I didn't really feel the need to or have the time. I don't know. It wasn't a priority. But this year, now that I work for them, I'm meeting with a lot of first year students, and it's been so validating because they make me like listening to them talk to me about how they feel. It's like, oh, so I'm not alone. Like they'll say like, oh yeah, I've been feeling like XYZ lately, or I feel like I really don't fit in with the people around me in my classes, and I'm like, oh,
it's a universal
experience. And so like it's very like disheartening to hear them say this, because like you don't want people to feel that way. But it's also very validating, because it's like, so this is a common occurrence, it seems, amongst first gen students to like feel like you don't really belong at a big university. You're just not relating to the people around you.
What advice would you give to a student who came to you saying that, you know, they don't fit in, they're having a hard time acclimating to classes? How would you give them advice on how to cope with that?
I have had to explain this to students, and I get a little anxious each time, because it's always very emotional. Like one time I was like, anyway, no, I'm not talking about work. I feel like I shouldn't do work stories in case we become really famous. But, so usually what I just tell people is like, number one, like you got there for a reason. Like you're not stupid, you're not dumb. And it's very normal. Like any student is going to feel overwhelmed when they first start college. And I also like to remind them that your parent did not go to college. They probably didn't tell you anything about what college is like. You probably did your college applications on your own. You basically got yourself to where you are now. And so that's not something that everyone can say. Like you're very self-made. You've shown you have what it takes and more. You put in more work than the traditional college student to get to the point that you're at. You're very capable of continuing onwards. Yeah.
So poetic.
Oh,
and then with all that, I mean, you said it yourself. You did everything yourself to get you where you are. Are you proud of yourself?
Oh, yes. I mean, like, there's definitely regrets. I feel like part of being a first-gen student, too, is you don't know what you don't know. And so you look back at college and you're like, man, I kind of wish I had done XYZ. But the problem is you didn't know XYZ was even a thing until many years down the road. Like how I didn't actually understand what graduate programs were until probably my third year of college. And now here I am as a senior trying to get my shit together to be able to have a master's program. It's a little interesting. What was the question? I went off on a tangent.
Are you proud of yourself?
Oh, right. And so, point blank, yes, I'm very proud of myself.
I'm very proud of you too.
Thank you.
Do you think your parents are proud of you?
Oh yeah. I mean, we don't talk about school a lot, but I know they are.
Do you like to keep it that way, that you guys don't really talk about it that much?
Honestly, no.
You want to talk about it more?
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say to them?
I don't know. I just kind of wish that they like ask me what I was doing sometime, like, because sometimes I'll like talk about things or like say something and honestly I just don't say anything, and I don't really blame them. Like, if you don't get it, you don't get it. But sometimes I wish I could like talk to someone about it at home. Yeah.
Do you write it in a little diary about it?
I do. Or I tell you.
Okay. With the couple of different career paths you've explored, do you regret any decisions you've made in college? I know you talked about like the graduate program, but is there any big things that you especially regret?
I regret what do I regret? I regret switching. I mean, I do and I don't regret switching my major a lot because I got to try a lot of really nice things. But I do wish that I was able to stick with something early on. And I also do wish that I had met with an academic advisor like as soon as I changed my major to marine bio, because I think that comes with like me is like, or being first gen, is you try to be very self-reliant in situations where you should not be self-reliant. Like there's certain points where you need to ask for help. And one of them was like making a schedule that makes it like efficient, I guess. I did meet with an advisor at a certain point, but I feel like it was a really bad quarter. The quarter he planned out for me was so bad, because it was like the first time I had taken so many STEM classes. But honestly, if I had met with him like maybe sooner, I wouldn't have had to pack so many STEM classes in, and it would have been a little more manageable. Yeah.
Okay. What's your ideal outcome with school? Like, once you graduate, what is if you could paint your own perfect picture, how would your life plan out? Maybe next 10 years.
Okay. Next 10 years. Well, let's start with, so immediately after college, I'm hoping that like by next year, I'll have like all the prerequisites done for the master's program I want to be in. And then I get like some sort of like entry level healthcare job, couple years, and get the experience in to apply for a master's program. And then I would like to become a physician's assistant. And then I would like to bask in the glory of a steady career in healthcare while also paying off all of my student debt. Yes.
Yes. So you're working for student run. Is it student run, right?
It's not student run. Students do work in it, but it's more, it has like adults running it. Yeah.
Okay. So with that counseling experience, how has that influenced how you look at freshmen?
Ooh. A little bit of sympathy. Because I honestly don't interact with a lot of freshmen outside of the program. Just because a lot of the classes I have now, you can't be a freshman and be in them at the same time. So really, like, I find them a lot of fun. Sometimes they stress me out a little because it's not like they're being bad. It's just that they're so stressed. Sometimes I'm like, please, like, you're gonna be okay. Like, we need to calm down, because they come in to ask me questions about things that they really don't have to be worrying about yet. Which I don't blame them. Like, you don't know, like, you shouldn't be worrying about something yet. And I guess it is good that they're thinking ahead. But you also just need to take it from a 10 down to a 2.
Yeah.
It's like, it's gonna be okay.
I know that we had talked a couple times about the freshmen that you're seeing. I think it was you and some coworkers had agreed that they're more, I guess, awkward or socially inept. What would you contribute that to?
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I think they were freshmen during the height of the pandemic. So they did not have like that transfer over to a new school experience in person. Like, they didn't get to be freshmen in high school in person. So I don't really think they learned what it would be like just socially to do something so new. Especially in college, it's extremely, like, a lot of them moved away from home. So not only are they getting like that freshman experience for the first time, they're also doing it in a completely new place where they know probably absolutely no one. So they just don't know. Yeah.
And then with those people, so I had an episode last week with Desiree. If you haven't watched that, please do. Me and Desiree talked about iPad kids and how we think that they're going to grow up to be. We kind of talked about how it's going to be a circle. Like, there's going to be some type of Redditor kind of kid. And then some people are going to kind of I guess, mellow out with the people who have been in the height of COVID during like their freshman year of high school, and now they're, I guess, kind of being like thrown in head first to college. Do you think that they are going to acclimate to social life? Do you think that they're going to have a continuous struggle? What does that look like in your mind of how they're going to progress?
A continuous struggle. I mean, I don't really have to deal with like behavioral problems so much because I mean everyone who I've met with is like super nice, just like the awkward part. But I guess it's kind of outside of like my scope of knowledge, but I keep seeing on TikTok about teachers who are in the trenches trying to deal with kids who just weren't socialized. And I've seen some people talk about like gentle parenting being the problem. I don't really know about that because whenever I see things on gentle parenting, I'm like, oh, that's good. Like, be nice to kids. But then people are like, no, we're not being mean enough. And I'm like, what's the truth?
Where's the line?
Where's the line? So I honestly don't know where it's coming from, but I feel like iPads are probably a big part of it. Or like the iPad kid. So I see it getting worse. Like, I feel like if people do not stop giving their children like tablets on a daily basis, your child is not gonna like have, number one, any attention span, like any self-control, emotional regulation. Like, they're gonna be a disaster, and I'm glad that I'm not the person who's gonna deal with it.
If we were in their shoes, like if COVID didn't happen our senior year, but say our like 8th grade to 9th grade year or 9th to 10th, what do you think you would be like now? Do you think you'd be like them, or do you think you'd try to go your best to make more friends? Do you think you'd be more extroverted?
I feel like I would definitely be more like them. Honestly, I was just thinking about this the other day because I hadn't thought about it too much like in recent times, like what impact the pandemic had on me and like my social abilities. And I like to think that I am like able to be like, I'm able to turn on the extroverted switch when I really need to, but I feel like my ability to do so like to my best kind of went away. Like, I feel like a part of my ability to like make myself or like put myself in uncomfortable situations like decreased with COVID, and I don't know if that was because like I wasn't talking to people or just not going outside. So I can imagine that if it happened at a much younger age, I would be devastated. I would be totaled. I would be like, don't talk to me ever. I can't go outside. So I do sympathize with these people, I guess.
It sounds like you're not too sure about it.
I do.
Okay. With UCSD, they do have a quarter system. How did you adjust to that coming from a semester system in high school?
I honestly don't remember. Like, my very first quarter at UCSD, like on my computer in my room, was very strange because I think all of my classes except one were pre-recorded YouTube videos. Like, you got me messed up because you think I'm gonna be paying like thousands of dollars just to watch pre-recorded YouTube videos. I want a refund. But anyways, so my first quarter, I didn't really have too much of a struggle because it was just me watching these videos on my own time. I had 3 classes, and one of them was an art class. So honestly, I was doing fine. Did I almost fail my math class? Yes. But that was because I had no help. I didn't know what I was doing. I don't like math, and I'm not good at it. But once we started in person, I think that's when it started to get like really painful because when everything was online, the professors, I will say, they were going really easy. They, like, I think they toned down a lot of, like, the expectations. There was, like, no final exams in a couple of my classes, no midterms. And so then now that things are, like, slowly... I feel like things are, like, completely back to normal now. It's kind of hell on earth. It's, like, so many tests, and it all happens so fast. And then being a senior on top of that, you're, like, senioritis, like... I don't have it in me anymore. It's like gone. And so it's like, I know I can do it because I've done it so many times, but you honestly just don't, it doesn't get easy.
And then from transferring from being in completely online to, I'm sure, some online classes and then fully online, would you say it gradually got harder, or did it kind of like hit you like a train?
I'd say it gradually got harder, but it still hit me like a train.
What advice would you give to people who are going to a UC from like a little small town? It's probably not a whole lot of super hard classes. What advice would you give them?
Don't expect perfection as soon as you get there, because a lot of my students, at least in my program, they put a lot of pressure on themselves to have it like all held together like their first quarter, and I'm here to tell you it's not going to happen. Like, you are not going to be amazing like your first quarter. No one is, really. You're going to mess up, like you're going to get frustrated, you're going to get stuck, and it's just going to be a struggle. But the fact is, like, you have to struggle a little to like get better. You have to learn what's not going to work for you to figure out what is going to work for you. So be easy on yourself, be kind.
Something I want to add to that, shit really does happen. In my freshman year of college, I thought I was doing really good. I was going to all of my classes on time, and my grandma got diagnosed with cancer. And that hit me like a train. My grandma and I are very close. And I was so sad. I had My Little Love by Adele on repeat. And I would just lay in my room and I would cry so hard. And it was really hard for me to get any schoolwork done. My professors were kind enough to be very sympathetic towards my situation in excusing my absences. And there was one time, I look back on it and laugh now, but there was one time in my history class, my professor was going over the history of cotton, and he opened the lecture with saying, everyone is born in cotton and everyone will die in cotton. And I imagined my grandma being buried in, like, she was wearing cotton, and I started crying and I had to leave the class. But I look back on it and it's kind of funny now, but in the moment it was very serious for me. But I just want to say, things do happen that are outside of your control, and life isn't perfect. And that was my freshman year, and it's okay to have setbacks. And I think dropped a class pretty early on in that semester anyway, but things happen and it's not the weight of the world on your shoulders. But speaking of that, how do you stay afloat with mental health during college?
I do not know. No, honestly, definitely friends. Having like good like school and social life balance, I feel like is very important, because the weeks where you don't socialize with people, at the end of the week you're just like, this is it. This is where I die. But then you see your friends and you're like, wow,
life is so good.
And so you just kind of have to like find this system of like treating yourself. I feel really motivated to get through like especially difficult weeks by having something to look forward to, like no matter how small it is, like how we're like gonna go on a trip, or like even just like seeing a friend like on a weekend. I'll be like, you know what, I'm gonna be super good these next couple of days, so that when I do XYZ to treat myself, it's gonna feel even better. So you just kind of do that, and then you're literally fine.
Yeah. And then with schoolwork, I can only imagine the type of coursework load you have taking I think upper division classes, right? Yeah. Okay.
Except one.
Okay. I can imagine that it's a big coursework load. How do you keep motivated when doing schoolwork?
Mostly because I'm scared of failing. That's like the biggest thing. Not doing good in my classes, I feel physically repulsed and ill. But I don't know. I feel like the main thing that's driving me now is knowing that I need to get my GPA up if I want to do graduate programs. Like, my GPA isn't horrible, but it's not competitive. And so now my biggest motivation is saying, like, I need to do good in my classes to keep my GPA at least where it's at, if not bring it up a little. So that's my biggest driving factor right now. Before that, I can't tell you. I don't think there was one.
What advice would you give to people who want more determination or passion, or just kind of a way to keep steady with their coursework?
I would think ask yourself why you're doing it. If you have like a clear set goal that has expectations that you need to meet, like look at them and realize that you either are doing the right thing or something needs to change. And the second one was, I think it was a quote I saw on Instagram, and it was like, don't let like it sounded kind of corny, but in the moment I was like, oh wow, this is so good. It was like, don't let your like hardships or your struggles or like your blah 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 get in the way of like achieving the things that you want. And I was like, wow, that is so real. Like, you cannot let the things that bother you get in the way of like what you really want. Because like I feel like I'd be so mad at myself if I like let one little thing like deter me from like succeeding or like getting something I want. So yes.
Do you think academic validation is real?
I do. I can't really say if I feel it so strongly. When I was in high school, it was like a really big thing for me. Now, I wouldn't say it's so much like academic validation for me. It's more like, I don't know how to describe it, like networking validation, because I feel like there's a lot of people around you where you hear about like who they know, who they're researching with, like what they're doing, like how deep in academia are you? Mm-hmm. And I feel this pressure to be the same, to like be like knee deep like in like research or professors or internship. And I feel like there's a validation there, but I can't also say that I'm 100% giving into it. I'm much more laid back now than I was in high school with that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. What do you think was the changing driving factor?
I think a lot of it has to do like just with the capacity of what I'm capable of. And it might sound kind of bad, but honestly, like with my kind of schedule, I can't fit research. I can't fit all these things into like what I already have. Like if I tried to fit like, I don't know what, like research is very different because there's people who do like 2 hours of research a week and there's people who do 20. But if I try to fit another 5 hours of an activity that I don't get paid for into my schedule, I would probably implode and fail all my classes. So I think a lot of it had to do with me just accepting like I just can't, like I just don't have the time, which is I mean it's not fine. It's not fine, but it's literally fine. Mm-hmm. So that's that.
If you had more time in your schedule or if there was more hours in the day, what would you do with them? Would you dedicate more of that time towards school? How would you choose to spend that?
I would dedicate more time to school and research. If I was like any other college student who like didn't have to worry about like money or like getting to school, I would spend more time doing my homework, and I would probably want to do research or just something like that I like some sort of internship or research or volunteering that just kind of you could put on your resume.
How important is networking while you're in college? I feel like it's something that's not really talked about a lot or brought up almost at all. It hasn't really even been brought up throughout my whole college career yet, that networking is in fact an important thing that you need to do. How important would you say that is in college?
Too important. Trust me. It's gonna come. It's gonna hit you like a truck. Like, I feel like people don't shut up about it sometimes. It's like, networking, and now that I have students, I have to say networking, because honestly, it's not easy to explain why it's important. I think the biggest idea is just like one day you're gonna need a job or you're gonna need people to write you letters of letters of recommendation are the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. Because when you're applying to like jobs or even graduate programs, you need letters of recommendation, you need references. And a lot of times they unfortunately have to be from your professors, which I feel like stinks because they're the people who I like to talk to the least. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, unfortunately, it's a thing.
Maybe they're just so unwelcoming because they don't want to write letters of recommendation.
You're like, no, thank you.
And then that's just about time. Do you have any final words for our viewers?
First-gen students are better. Thank you.
Alrighty, and I think that's time, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning in and watching the String Theory podcast. And good night, viewers.